Cabernet in Australia really was, there was winning wine shows was more towards I suppose a greener, less ripe style. And I was doing a lot of show judging at the time, and I was very concerned about the fact that Margaret River Cabernet was described as being green, and I didn't see that in our Cabernets as single vineyard from where we were. So I spoke to Keith Mugford from Mosswood, and we decided to look at the differences. We'd like to look at the differences in the Margaret River wine region. Margaret River is a big wine region. It's 118 kilometres long by 27 kilometres wide. And we approached John Gladstone, who is the founder of Margaret River. He did the first paper which suggested that had potential for growing great Cabernet. And he'd already thought about, this is some sort of 30 years later, he'd already thought about the potential for sub-regions within Margaret River. And he drew up a map for us, dividing it into, I think, 5 different sub-regions. And, and basically the characters between north and south. So we had a tasting, and it was interesting because Keith and I, Keith took most of the brunt of it, but there was a lot of aggression directed toward us, and we were almost accused of we were going to be beaten up and we were going to put people out of business. And it was very nerve-wracking to actually have this first sub-regional tasting in 1999. But what came about was that the differences between the sub-regions from north to south was greater than the differences between viticulture and winemaking, and it was a really great outcome. And broadly speaking, you know, the differences were in the north you had you know, more sort of cherry, lighter fruit flavours, riper, and the wines generally tended to be sweeter in fruit profile. In the Williabrup sub-region, which is where you've got in Mosswood and Cullens and Woodlands today, you know, you have very definite characters of cassis, chocolate, red capsicum, and that ironstone character which comes from the soil, which is, you have the forest grove soil is the topsoil of forest, has a gravel and a granite topsoil with a laterite subsoil and then clay, and you can taste that ironstone in all those wines, I think. And then you go further south and you get more sort of savoury, like you know, blueberry, sage type of characters. So it was really interesting to see that. And then going on from that, we this year had the first proposed Williabrup sub-regional tasting, just to dive deeper into the character of Williabrup as a sub-region. And we had the 30-year vertical tasting of Cullen and Mosswood. And what was really interesting is because before you saw the difference between sub-regions, but there was very clear differences when you have that 30-year history between vineyards which are, say, 5 kilometres apart. And I mean, it's not anything new in the terms of the world of wine, but we want to evolve that and to look more deeply into what is the character of the Williabrup sub-region, and indeed single vineyard site within our own sites. And that's really exciting because it's real, it will always be there, and it's comes from the land. But I think Virginia at Bass Felix has carried on for the past 8 years the sub-regional tasting of the whole of Margaret River, so she might like to talk about that. I don't know.
Gillian?
Oh, look, I mean, I think regionally, what we've proven in Margaret River is that there is an unbelievable commitment to growing great Cabernet Sauvignon in Margaret River. And I think by every year, all the winemakers get together, they get barrel samples at their individual vineyards. We look at all the technical notes, the soil type that it's grown in, exactly where it is in Margaret River, the row orientation, the clone type, when it was picked, the harvest date, the harvest analysis, and then how that actually then results in what sort of wine. And I think for us as a region, it's helping us define what brings out the best in Cabernet Sauvignon for us. What do we want? And what site does it for us, and what row orientation, all that kind of stuff. So every winemaker in Margaret River who makes Cabernet comes together on one day. It's the most amazing celebration of Cabernet. And I think there's been a real groundswell that's building passion for Cabernet in Margaret River. It's just a tough gig trying to tell the rest of the world. But I think it is coming. I think Cabernets are getting more elegant. We're getting smarter in how we're handling it. We're getting more gentle. I think the wines are more elegant. I think we've all, you know, certainly in the few years that we've been doing it as a group of winemakers, or everyone in the district's going, you know, the last 2 years have been better than the 2 years before that, and they're better than the 2 years before that because of that commitment to making it better. And I think it's a phenomenal thing that we can do as a region.
Look, I know this is a Cabernet and Friends event, but I think it's important just to note, for the benefit of our broader audience, that the good thing about the whole of the Australian wine industry is the same thing is happening in each region across the country, whether you're growing Pinot in the Yarra or Shiraz in the Barossa or whatever. The same intensity of trying to discover and get back to the roots is really driving all our winemaking attitudes and approaches, and I think it is manifest in the glass more and more year on year.